Something I like to do on this channel when a new movie is coming out, kind of talk about the reviews over on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I know people are split on exactly if we should be listening to Rotten Tomatoes, if we should even be checking out Rotten Tomatoes. And now to say that, to listen to them, I don't normally listen to them, but I do like to kind of preview what they thought about it, both critics and fan side. As you know, Thunderbolts does come out within a couple of days, this week to be exact, so we're getting some reviews from the early screenings from the press, being the critics who sometimes have different opinions than fans. We currently at the moment do not have the fans meter, but we do have the critics meter, so we're going to jump into the Rotten Tomato scores for Thunderbolts. When this first debuted, I believe, at a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. Since then, since the time of making this video, it has dropped down to an 89% based on 96 reviews. Now, 89% is obviously not a bad score. Very good score, but to debut at a 95% is insane. I think it's the second best rated debut for a Marvel movie on Rotten Tomatoes, so something like that. But we're going to go through the reviews and, see what they say. So, even though Marvel's latest doesn't really have anything new to offer, characters can make all the difference, and Thunderbolts has the stellar, empathetic Florence Pugh, a mid-level Marvel with a top-tier star. So something is interesting that, they have nothing offered new, which is a really interesting question when, at this point in Marvel movies, what new do they have to offer in movies? But also, we've seen this in a previous video that I made where the early screenings for people invited to them, they gave their reviews over on Twitter, and we saw a lot of things, specifically with Florence Pugh being a standout, as well as Louis Pullman as Sentry. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that. Thunderbolts is a great mix of superhero action and soul-searching drama that really manages to tug at your heartstrings, as we get to see all these fan favorites finally step from the darkness into the light. Thunderbolts earns its place in the MCU as one of its more thoughtful, character-driven entities. So, the similarity between these reviews coming back to back is, these characters being, the focal point of the movie, which is, interesting, which is good. Character-driven movies are good. And I like to see, the darkness into the light. As we know, these characters, for the most part, were bad, maybe not the best tier of villains, kind of, I think you'll see in a later review, if I remember correctly, they're not the top tier villains, but they're a good group, and a good group that mix well. And tugging on your heartstrings is really an interesting thing to hear, because what can these characters really tug on your heartstrings with besides maybe Florence Pugh's Yelena and Sebastian Stan's Bucky? It's interesting. A Marvel riff on The Boys, if it were written for adults instead of edgelord teenagers with oppositional defiant disorder. The characters in Thunderbolts are quite fun and charming. Florence Pugh steals the movie and shines in every scene. It doesn't necessarily save the current state of the MCU, but it's a start in the right direction. It doesn't always land, but it dares to be different. From the title to the team up, fresh and thoughtful in a way recent Marvel efforts haven't always managed. Again, same theme we're going to be seeing here. Characters are good. Florence Pugh is a standout, but it's also, we're seeing that it's fresh and interesting. Of course, with every movie, no matter how good it could be, there will be some rotten scores. And this comes from back to back. Entertaining in all the usual ways, but it can't quite muster an identity of its own, or a novel approach that could make it stand out from the rest, despite the fact that this B team of superheroes is comprised of some A-list character actors. Thunderbolts feels stunted by the limitations by its shared universe. Thunderbolts follows a familiar Marvel formula, entertaining at times, but weighed down by a sluggish act and a standard explosive finale. Florence Pugh shines, but the film overall feels average. A more human reinterpretation of heroism reshapes the future of the MCU and restores our hope with a promising and necessary change of pace. Thunderbolts tries to turn superheroes into therapists, but all it really does is leave fans desperate for a proper brawl. So these are like the duality of bad reviews. Leaving fans desperate for a proper brawl, while the first review I did in this little section says an explosive finale. So Thunderbolts is a solid anti-hero entry within the MCU and under the Walt Disney Company. Certainly one of their strongest offerings lately, considering how low audience enthusiasm has sunk for the franchise's post-Avengers Endgame. By prioritizing practicality and character work over an overload of VFX and Easter eggs. Thunderbolts carves out one of the most grounded and effective entries the MCU has delivered in quite some time. The MCU's earthbound versions of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Once again, Marvel makes us fall in love with a group of losers. In addition to the usual Marvel fun and action, Thunderbolts actually explores themes of depression, loneliness, and purpose. And I am really excited after hearing that review by itself. Making these like C-list kind of characters, and this is in reference to the Guardians, become, again, A-list people that we want to see more of. We want to see standalone movies for. We want to see specials. We want to see more with these characters. A lot of these, characters, they're side characters, from the side from maybe Bucky and Elena. Do we really care much about these characters? That's up for, your interpretation. But I personally didn't really care for many of these characters, besides maybe Red Guardian at that point. Again, Sebastian Stan's Bucky and Florence Pugh's Yelena, I obviously cared about. But the other characters, I didn't really have much to really think about with them. But again, I'm finding myself so excited for this. And, it's exploring themes of depression, loneliness, and purpose I really like, and it goes into the theme that we saw before from another review that these characters are trying to be therapists. Thunderbolts is a decent enough movie by Marvel standards, but it highlights all the limitations that Marvel has cultivated for itself and gives us very little to expect beyond an advert for yet another film with promises to the right ship. Thunderbolt is not just the best Marvel movie in a while, it is top tier Marvel. With the grounded feel of the original Avengers mixed with the fact that this isn't unafraid to get dark, this is what the fans have been waiting for. An odd duck of a superhero flick, one that almost leans into the skid of the MCU, and by doing so, might actually straighten it out. In this sense, Thunderbolts comes within an inch of being the Barbie of the MCU. What the hell does that mean? Am I tweaking right now? What does that mean? Am I missing something? The result is a genuinely human tale of supercharged antiheroes and an exploration of how exposure to non-stop violence can cause permanent psychic damage. Feels like a throwback to Phase 1 Marvel in both good and bad ways. That is so open for interpretation. Good and bad ways. What are the good and what is the bad? The most solid the Sacred Timeline has felt in a little while, providing an adventure benefiting its overlooked title characters. Until its climactic collapse, Thunderbolts is good enough, it's visually coherent, and it doesn't depend too heavily on having working knowledge of the Marvel Universe. Then again, it's clearing ever-lowering bar, really something to celebrate. Everyone in the film is having a grand old time. Its dark humor suits the actors, but Pugh is the center. Her performance combines Yelena's pain and guilt with a weary humor. She may be the most low-key movie star going, yet you're drawn to her. Great to see Marvel taking such good care of their female characters, Yelena and villain Val. This is actually Black Widow 2, and clearly Johansson, a producer here, walked out so that Pugh could run. Great team dynamics as well, but not enough action. That's so interesting. Thunderbolts is a welcome surprise for the MCU's recent output, placing a strong emphasis on the complex emotions of its core cast of antiheroes while still building innovative action set pieces. So this is interesting. I did not know Scarlett Johansson was a producer here, and it is interesting. The review from Grace Randolph talks about just 2 female characters in this when we have 2 other ones. I mean, we've theorized certain things with certain characters, but this is interesting. But the fact that here there's not enough action, after hearing that review, I start to think about the other reviews and kind of the similarity where they talk about it lacking a little bit of action or having just action at the end, where the whole movie seems like it's a fast pace, everything's happening. I'm a little surprised at those reviews, but we're gonna end it off there. Let me know what you think of this. Are you excited for the Thunderbolts? Again, take these reviews with a grain of salt. As you know, they get their early screening. As you know, sometimes critics do not think alike as fans. There's a lot that goes into it. Form your own opinion on the movie. Let me know what you think of it. I am going to see it Thursday. Let me know when you're going to see it. I'll see you on the next one.